Podcast, a place where we talk about everything from life, marriage, being single, conflict in marriage, conflict in relationships. We even talk about faith. This episode is hosted by Kenneth Bonner, Reggie Smith, and Jacqueline Wells. Well, welcome to the When We Talk Podcast. This is Kenneth Bonner, Reggie Smith,
and Jackie Wells.
So we want to talk about the current events that's going on, and a lot of debate is going back and forth about whether racism exists or not. Obviously, there's a big issue when you see people protesting and rioting, from a black man getting killed by a cop, then another black man getting killed by a cop, or a woman getting killed by a cop. A lot of people are debating, stating different facts, saying that racism doesn't exist, and others who felt racial discrimination or any form of racism are on the other side saying it does. So because of this, we felt like it was an important topic to tackle. So let me start by asking you guys, does racism exist?
And I love this question, but I hate the actual topic for the simple fact is that for anyone to ask that question, it means that for their lifetime, however long they've been on this earth, they've either been blind or they've turned a blind eye or they refuse to accept it or they just flat out don't care. So before I go into my soliloquy, nothing stokes my fire more as of late than to hear people on the other end, on the outside looking in, make the erroneous comment and statement that racism doesn't exist. So let's take a brief little history trip down our historical line as far as it pertains to our country and African-American people and people of color as it pertains to racism. Let's go back to eugenics. At the turn of the 20th century, the sterilization of people with disabilities and racial minorities. This was supported by the U.S. Supreme Court and the United States government, and it was a model for Nazi Germany that was implemented during the Holocaust. Between 1920 and 1970, thousands upon thousands of Southern Black women were sterilized without knowledge or consent. Oh, that's not racism. All right, well, let's go. Let's talk about the reason why, and you can do your history, the reason why Planned Parenthood was created by Margaret Sanger, 1916, set up birth control, set up to control the Black population. If you want it, Google it, check it out, research it on yourself. Or let's talk about the Tuskegee experiment. How over 600 Alabama Black men took part in an experiment of syphilis, and more than 200 or more were allowed to suffer the disease even after they had a cure for it, even with the side effects and treatment. Want to go some more? Let's talk about Rosewood Massacre, 1923 in Florida, that was racially motivated. Or let's talk about Black Wall Street. The only time that the African-American dollar that would circulate several upon several days within its own community. This community had the Black dollar that was high and prosperous. We had doctors, they had lawyers, they had schools and dentists, several churches, several schools in Tulsa, which was racially motivated. Let's talk about Willie Lynch, the Willie Lynch letters, the making of a slave in 1712 off the coast of the shores of Virginia, how it was designed to set up and control the Black man. I can't go all the way into it, designed to control the slave. I can't go all the way into it, but in the end of these Willie Lynch letters that was created in 1712, he said, if we continue to institute these theories and these thoughts and these processes, that it would keep the Black man and the Black woman and the Black child for at least 1,000 years. So there's always been a plan for depopulation for the Black man, control of the Black people, and enslavement. So when people tell me that it doesn't exist, that lets me know. And these are just a few things. I have so many more, but we don't have the time. But that lets me know that people haven't done their history. Because if you go back and you look over the history, this has not been doctored. This has not been made up. These are in memoirs. These are in constitutional laws. It has been here. It has thrived and it continues to thrive. And the only reason why a lot of people don't see it or refuse to see it is because it's been so covert over the last several decades. It raises and it rears its head in peaks and valleys valleys, then it goes back down. But now it's smack dab in your face, live and well, and in living color. And for anyone to say that it doesn't exist, you're blind and you're lying.
Wow. So he went all the way back and gave us a lot of history as it relates to racism. However, when you're talking about racism, and is it still relevant today, I'm going to have to agree with Reggie and say that yes, that it is. Have we come a long way since the Jim Crow laws, since Martin Luther King, did his march and was fighting for rights and equality for all people? Yes, I still believe that racism exists. And why do I say that? Because even now, as you can see, even in our community, in our employment industries, you still have higher ratios of there being a disparity between whites and blacks. You still have more white CEOs over Fortune 500 companies than you do black CEOs. There's still a sense of white privilege in America today. So, even in our educational system from back then, when it was segregation involved, where we couldn't go to school with white people, where they didn't want us to have an education, where, it was a threat to them for us to be educated. It was a threat to them, if they saw us protesting, because they felt like there would be a rise in violence. And even now today, even though we see protesting happening, I still think it takes us back to, back in the late 60s, as to, the reasons why we had to protest, because we were fighting for our equality. We were fighting, we're supposed to be living in a democracy where we are supposed to be treated equal against our counterparts. And yet still in different sectors of the world today, racism still exists. So for me, I agree with Reggie, as much as he talked about the different racisms that we have encountered just as African Americans, I don't think that the racism just stops with just African American individuals. It goes all the way to, immigrants, to people. I'm just going to say white Americans who think that anything other than white Americans should be more as privileged than they are. So yes, we are still battling that right now today, and it's still something. It's that big fat elephant in the room. And to Reggie's point, for people to think that racism still does not exist is baffling, because we are still battling and we are still struggling with a lot of these things that you would think that we would have come so far from, and yet we're still having to fight police brutality. You know what I'm saying? We're still having to fight to have equal pay in the workplace. We're still, having to fight to get a seat in the Senate. You know what I'm saying? So I honestly believe that I'm not saying that we haven't made any headway towards the downing of racism, but I think that we still have a long way to go.
Well, I think everything that the show was centered around was said in the first 5 minutes. But the reality of what's going on right now is that it's a conversation that's been long overdue. And I personally feel like it's been avoided. I feel like we have made a lot of progress in this country, but at the same time, I feel like a lot of people want to have an opinion about it. If you've never experienced what I've experienced, or someone from a black person's or brown or whatever the case who's been discriminated against, if you've never walked in their shoes, if you've never cried their tears, if you've never felt their pain, if you've never been disrespected just because of the shade of your skin, then how do you have so much to say, or a right to say that something does not exist, when we see it every day? As you all mentioned, we equal pay. I've been on jobs to where I've been discriminated against and been overlooked for positions for other people who they felt were qualified, when in actuality it really wasn't about them being more qualified. They liked that person more, or could have been racially motivated. I can't really say about that, but I've been there. I've been there. And other times I was qualified for positions over other folks, but other people got it. Then we talk about pay. being in different industries, I didn't make the same pay as other folks, and I was there a lot longer than most folks. But at the same time, was it because of the color of my skin? It's hard to say, but I still feel like racism does exist. I mean, when I remember a time I was standing at a red box machine, not dating myself, but standing outside of the red box machine getting a movie, and some white guys in the truck with a Confederate flag roll past and say, F you, N, and call me the N word, and kept riding by. And the only thing I could say was, you coward, because you didn't have the Conans or whatever you want to call them to stand up to my face and express how you felt. And I think that a lot of it is, it's as you say, systemic, because we see it in movies. Here we go now, because this is going on. All of a sudden, all these slave movies are popping up. I think that it's perpetuated in our movies, our music, everything. That we're bad people. When in actuality, you can take bad apples from every race out here. There's criminals of all color. There's good people, bad people, whatever the case. But to say that racism doesn't exist is an absolute lie. So my next question is, why do we think racism exists? Do you think it's because, Reggie, you were talking about the Margaret Sanger and the Planned Parenthood, the situation that it was planted in a specific community to, target a specific race. Why is that? Are we a threat? Or what do you think the root cause of the racism is?
To answer that question, I think that in order for anyone to come up with such a sinister or diabolical plan, there has to be a rationale behind it. And what I mean by that is that the average person just doesn't get up in the morning and just start thinking about something like that he's not passionate about. My thing is that either there was something about us, either they didn't like, they didn't agree with, or they were scared of. Now, I'm going to challenge people to really do some in-depth research as far as our origins, as far as what they found, what they saw, and how it later kind of depicted how they would deal with us from here on out. And it would then transcend from generation to generation to generation. There was at one point in time a global plan to get rid of people of color. You could trace some of this back to biblical days. You could trace some of this back to what happened when they went into the Egyptian pyramids and read and saw the hieroglyphics, because it painted a picture that did not include them. This is not me speaking. These are factual statements. You can check the data on it. Once they figured out that whatever was in these hieroglyphics did not mention them or have them in mind, along with this and stuff you tied into the biblical aspect of it, there was a all-out global plan to get rid of us. Tell me why, with Napoleon, as he was leaving Egypt, going down the Nile, the reason why we don't have the noses on the pyramids is because Napoleon set his ships and his guns and his turrets towards the pyramid and blew off the noses because of the Negroid features, because it didn't symbolize them. And so in order for you to try to create a pure race like Hitler did, or in order for you to try to create a population control like Margaret Sanger, and the racial, her husband was also racist as well, to get rid of a certain people, there has to be a reason. That's just not something that you just come up with overnight. There's a reason behind it. And you only do that to people that you don't like. But there's a reason that you don't like them, because you fear something that eventually, if it ever came to fruition, it would blow the tops off of what we've been taught and what we know. So this is why we have this right now, because there has been some truth about we as people of color that people don't want to accept. And let me go back to here. Anytime you try to conceal the truth, and you try to paint the picture that white people came from Egypt, or the pyramids were built by them, or you reconfigure the maps and the structures and everything else like that to put a whole country or a civilization somewhere else, what are you trying to hide? What are you trying to get rid? What are you trying not to get us to see? And the reason why a lot of stuff has continued to go on is because we as a people have been taught their history. We don't know our history. And every time we try to identify our history, they find some type of way to erase it or destroy it or remove it from our memory. But now we're at a point in time where people is an awakening that's happening and people are starting to research and put the pieces together. And they're now starting to come up and find out that 2 + 2 does equal 4. Now we have an issue on our hand. But there's a fear, which is why when they walk up to our car, they automatically got their guns drawn. They're scared of us. For what? And this has continued to go on. And to me, racism is even more terrifying and more destructive than H1N1 AIDS, this coronavirus or whatever, because it's global. And not only has it killed physically, it has killed spiritually, it has killed financially, it has killed emotionally, it has killed psychologically. It has done a total damage on people of color. And until we start to realize that and understand that, that's when we'll start some healing and also starting to get the answer and start moving forward into who we are as a people.
I want to kind of shift that, even though those were excellent points that you just made, Reggie. But even with the most recent death of George Floyd and, of course, Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor, we are really starting to see a kind of a turn and a shifting in how people is viewing racism. And I'm talking, just from, as you can see now, a lot of Fortune 500 companies, a lot of just ordinary organizations are coming out saying that we're standing with, Black Lives Matter. They're calling out their names. One of my university, Indiana Tech, the president came out and wrote a letter to the alumni just saying, we stand with you. We understand. And these are the different things that we're going to put in place just to make sure that we have equality demonstrated in our university. So I think that, there is a different turn that's taking place and the shifting that's taking place because people are starting to see that, yes, there are disparities in our country today. You know what I'm saying? People are starting to come out and speak against it. And they see now that, hey, this isn't right. We need to start changing our policies. We need to start changing some of the things that we've been doing just to make sure that people feel like, there's not inequality in how we're operating business. So I think that, unfortunately that, these things had to happen and the shift had to come by someone losing their lives. I think that now people are really starting to see that a change has got to happen. And to your point, Ken, when you think about racism, just in a whole, it's oppression. Is they want to keep people oppressed and from not being able to do some of the things that they feel like they should completely have control over, which is why there's a disparity, like I was mentioning earlier, in pay between different races, in the positions, is in political power. There's disparities there. So, I just think that, like Reggie said, until we can really fully evolve from that and understand that it does still exist, we're really not going to get nowhere. We're moving in the right direction. I honestly believe that we are moving in the right direction. They're starting to really crack down on, police reform and trying to put different policies and procedures in place to try to get things aligned the right way. So I do feel like, a turning point is happening. There is a shifting that is occurring and people are starting to see that injustice is not okay. People of color shouldn't be treated any different than a person who is white. So I see that there is a shifting, me personally.
Can I ask you guys a question? And my thing is that, Jackie, I'm grateful that a lot of these companies now are starting to come out and acknowledge this. And people are making moves and they're trying to make changes. But my question is that why now? Why now? Why did it take this to happen? Because this has been going on for decades. It's been going on for centuries. What made this so significant than the other two deaths that happened just days and weeks before George Floyd, or the other deaths that preceded that months and years ago? Why now?
So before I answer the question, I want to go back to something that Jackie was saying and the thought that I had. I do believe that we have made a lot of progress. And I do believe that there's a lot of people that are waking up. I don't believe personally that every white person out here is racist. And that's not the way that we're coming off. We don't hate anybody of a different skin color or a different complexion. That's not our intentions. We're just talking about the category of the people who actually hate Black people and put them, in this one bucket of despicable people as they treat us. But I feel personally like this conversation has been going on for a long time. However, it hasn't been in the limelight. It hasn't been, portrayed as much. And I think that now when you have people who march across the world, when you see the protests in the large numbers like you see now, I think people have to really do a lot of self-examination. Not just the corporations, not just the CEOs, but every person on this entire planet. You need to do self-examination and look at it to see where we have erred as people, not just non-believers, but believers too. We have to really look at it and evaluate the fact that we have been, people of color have been discriminated against for so long, and it's been overlooked. It's been a conversation that was swept under the rug. I mean, when you really, really think about all the atrocities that happened to Black people from when the Black people started, the 150 Black people started the Republican Party in Texas. And another party hired KKK or whoever to start killing those people and try to get them to switch parties. It's happened. You can look at Emmett Till. It's been going on for years, but nobody has said anything about it. And personally, I believe now it's only being said because of how bad it was that George Floyd died. You can't avoid that conversation when you look at what happened to him. You couldn't avoid it when you look at it when it happened to everybody else. But I just really feel like the way he died, and anybody who watched that video, that was the turning point.
I think that with the George Floyd tragic incident, and I hate to say this, that the way that it happened, but I think that it needed to happen because now it allowed people to actually see what we've been talking about for so long. It allowed now the other people outside of people of color to now see this is why Colin Kaepernick knelt. Had nothing to do with the flag. It had everything to do with the mistreatment and the atrocities of people of color. And I think that as tragic as it was, this has caused that turning point for people to now open up their eyes. Because I'm going to be honest, and this is just my opinion, but maybe people might agree, had they not actually seen it firsthand, where to a point to where the police officers couldn't doctor it up, they couldn't get together in their think tanks to try to reconstruct something to paint a different picture. I believe that if the people didn't see it, if the world didn't see it, then this would have went on like any other case that we've had, and they probably would have been exonerated and freed or whatever. But the fact is that they actually saw it. We actually literally watched a man take his last breath. That's tragic. That's traumatizing to any individual. Now, unless you've been in the military, you've been a first responders or police officers where you see death all the time, still doesn't say that that's something easy to deal with. But the average person hasn't witnessed people die like that. So it's opened up the eyes, and I'm glad that it has opened up the eyes of many, many upon thousands and thousands of people to see that this is what's been going on. And we're not going to even talk about those things that have been undocumented, those things that have gone on in the back of alleys and police cars and in jail cells that has never been reported. We're now in living color facing this thing head on. And it's something, to me, it's something to behold. The people out there right now, blacks, whites, you got Hispanics, you got Asians and everything now fighting on one accord. And now you're pushing the powers that be to start making change. And I think that it's a beautiful thing. Now, take away the riots and the looting and everything else like that. But what you see now every single day, it was breathtaking for me to see that many people in Houston. It was just breathtaking to see that. And this is what it's all about, making and creating change, and not just creating change, but making sure that this change is just not for now, but it's for our seeds and our kids and children to come later on down the line.
That speaks volumes, especially to the Generation Xers now. You know, like you said, our children are now becoming more involved with the different things that's happening across our country, and it's affecting them. You know what I'm saying? Because, you know, back then we didn't think once about protesting. You know what I'm saying? Even with the Rodney King issue that was going on, you know, that was things that we saw on TV. However, as a person of youth when that was happening, I couldn't even imagine participating in something like that. And now, you know, with our younger generation, they are starting to show how passionate they are and seeing change happen. You know, and so I think when you see that too, you have so many people that are young, the younger generation that's out there. You know, I think people, you know, the older generations are starting to see, because they are our future, if you think about it. And to me, I just feel like they're in a place like, you're not getting ready to do this to us, and this is not getting ready to happen, you know, once we become adults. You know, so we see the change is happening. We see that it's taking place. And, you know, I'm excited about it, to be honest with you, because again, we have been through so much, just as people of color, you know, and to Ken's point, it's not that we're saying that every white person is a racist, but we know that it's there. You know what I'm saying? We know that it exists with some people. And even, you know, when you have people that look at racism from the fact that, you know, I'm not going to treat you the same way I'm treated, then you know that there's an underlying issue there as well. You have people that hate other people just to be hateful. You know, so again, it's an ugly monkey that we're looking at, but unfortunately, it's stuff that we have to continue to fight and battle with each and every day. So,
ugly monkey,
the ugly monkey.
So I just want to just shift a little bit, because we know it exists. We talked about it a lot. We talk about it constantly. Obviously, with the situation going on, it's evident, and still with the other situations. Here is my point behind all of this. This is the biggest thing that I stand on. And what I do have a problem with is we didn't, you know, it's not on the news over and over again about the guy that got shot, the retired police officer protecting the pawn shop. He was shot by, I don't know if it was a black man, white man, or whatever the case, but he was murdered. He was a cop. He was African-American male. In Chicago, there were over 20 people shot in one weekend and 10 deaths, if I'm not mistaken. I could have the numbers wrong. But I don't hear a lot of outrage or outcry about those things. And my whole point with Black Lives Mattering, they should matter. They should matter. They need to matter. I still feel like we need to talk about all of those people that lost their lives as well. And I get the whole protest was centered around the brutality, police brutality, and needing that reform. But I personally feel like, as a Black man, we also need reform in our own community, you know, because we see a lot of crime amongst each other. And I can't hate another brother. I can't hate, regardless of, again, taking the color barrier down. I don't hate anybody from any race. You know what I'm saying? That's not the point that I'm making. What I'm saying is that I don't not only get tired of seeing the police brutality, but I also get tired of, you know, other Black brothers and sisters, just the crime we have amongst ourselves as people. And that's one point I want to make. And the other point is that since there's such an outcry right now, we know we have an election in November. I just hope that the momentum keeps going past November, past the election. And that's just basically, you know, what I feel in looking at things, because it just seems like there are opportunists that try to take these situations and milk them for the wrong reasons. There's people hurting. We're hurting from a lot of the stuff that's been going on. And I don't want us to forget after the election on November 3rd. And that's basically my point.
Can I just say to your point, when you're talking about black on black crime, I think the issue is that when we see black on black crime, and not that it's being avoided. However, there's a lot of cases, of crime and, people that get killed in Chicago and many other cities across the United States. But justice do get served somehow or some form of way if they're caught or whatever the case may be. You do see cases where people are taken to jail and you're seeing some form of justice there. However, when you're looking at it from a perspective of police brutality and where you're seeing, white people kill black people and nothing happens, I think that's where the issue lies. And so granted, I agree with you 100%. I think that it's a topic that still needs to be addressed. However, you have to look at it from that perspective because, even, going back to Trayvon Martin, that whole issue of him being killed and, George Zimmerman, nothing happening to him. Then you have the issue of Sandra Bland. 1 minute, you see her, she's making statements online and standing up for her rights. And then when she challenged the police officer, he tackles her down. And then next thing we know, she didn't make it out of jail. And so there's so many other countless cases of where we're seeing all of this stuff happening, but yet nothing is being done, to people who did those, I'm going to say to white people who cause harm to those people. However, when it's black on black crime, at least something is happening. And I think that's where it's a huge difference. And I'm not saying that, I'm not trying to diminish your point is saying that it shouldn't be addressed and that we shouldn't bring light to that, because I think that to the most part, people think that that's ridiculous. It's been going on in Chicago for quite some time, but you have to look at the environment that people are raised in. You have gangs that people have to, that people go through and what they deal with. Then you have poverty, communities and different things like that, where people are just subject to that type of environment, and that's literally all they know. Is it an excuse and is it justifiable? No, but I think that that's just what we're looking at, and that's just what I have to say about that.
The political verbiage that we hear, the all lives matter. I do agree that all lives do matter. They do lie. Biblically, the Bible says that all lives are precious, all souls are precious to God. I get that. But when I hear it thrown out, and I'm not saying with you, Kenneth, but when I hear it thrown out as if to change the narrative, Black Lives Matter, because for the simple fact is that it's our lives that's being called into question every single day. Every single day, our lives are being called into question. Anytime a law-abiding Black man, Black woman, Black child is behind the steering wheel and instantly, automatically gets nervous because a police officer pulls behind them, that's a problem. Automatically, you go from a law-abiding citizen to having a casual day to actually fearing for your life, wondering if you're going to make it home, depending on or based on how this particular police officer and his cronies might be feeling at that particular time. So for me, yes, I do agree that all lives do matter. But as of right now and over the last however many years you want to say, Black lives are caught into question. Black lives are in the forefront of this right now. And to the Black on Black crime situation, that's a whole nother systemic issue in itself that you can't tie into this. That's a whole nother separate systemic issue. But when you have environments and systems that are not set up for people to succeed, you understand what I'm saying? If you look at the animal kingdom, if you eventually erase that thing, the natural habitats or the things the proclivities that animal needs, it's going to start acting out as a way of survival. It might even begin to become erratic in its behavior. That's just the nature of things. Now, am I saying that that's an excuse for why we kill each other? No, I'm not saying that. But there are other things that precedes that, and it has to do with all of that. All of that. But when I hear people throw that in, and again, Kenneth, I'm not talking about you, but when we're talking about these current issues, and I hear people throw that in as to try to change the narrative or to create another dialogue, it just bothers me. Because here's my thing at the end of the day. And let me say this to piggyback off what Kenneth said. No, I don't believe that all white people are racist. No, I don't. I don't believe that. All right. But I do believe that there are a few of them, a number of them that have their own preconceived notions about us that are not necessarily true based off of what they see on TV or what they hear. And here's my thing. The reason why a lot of them continue to bypass or overlook or to ignore the racism topic is because it's not happening to them. If it starts happening to them, if their women are raped, if their men are beaten, and their children are abused and things like that, then they'll really start to see that this is not just made up. We're not just making this up because we don't have anything else better to do. And it's like if me and you have cancer and I don't, and I hear you continue to complain about it. In my mind, I'm thinking, oh, it's not that bad. It ain't that serious. Okay, you might be hurt. You might exhibit some pain from time to time, but it's not until I get cancer till I start be like, dang, you know something? This cancer is really real. It really does affect you in that type of way. So I just think that a lot of people are insensitive and either they don't care or they turn their eye to it because at the end of the day, the truth hurts. The reality hurts at the end of the day. And a lot of people just don't want to face the reality is that there is a real serious detrimental problem that's going on in our communities, in our streets, in our towns and cities, in our country, and that's going on globally. And we have to recognize that. And until people start to recognize that this is a serious situation amongst people of color, Black and brown people of color, they will continue to dance around in this circle.
So let me be clear. I am not saying that all lives matter in this situation right now. That was not my statement. My statement was, it bothers me that we're not talking about all the people that are dying. Okay. So from, again, the guy that was shot outside of the pawn shop when people were rioting and looting. Okay. That was unnecessary. Okay. So again, just to bring my point back, I am outraged by the experiences we have with police. I can take it back to a personal account to where I was driving from here, from Texas to Indiana, and the car I was driving had an axle brake. Okay. It was an older car. So I spent the night in the car because it wasn't any hotels and ended up in Cairo, prior to Cairo, Illinois. And I switched. I fixed up the axle. I fixed it myself. Didn't know how to change the axle, but didn't have the money to do it at the time. And I needed to get to Indiana. Had a destination, had an appointment, had to take care of something. Drove about another 100 miles. Then the other axle broke after that one got fixed. And that axle broke in Cairo, Illinois. So at that point in Cairo, Illinois, I had to have somebody come pick me up and tow me about 50, 60 miles. Then I had to sleep in a hotel overnight. Got back in the car when I went and picked my car up, drove from Cairo, Illinois, or whatever, 50 miles outside of whatever it was, probably was still Cairo, Illinois, driving to Indiana. And I'm trying to stop my car. And all of a sudden my car keeps pulling when I'm hitting my brakes. Keeps pulling. So I just drove all the way home because obviously I needed to get there. I couldn't miss the appointment that I had. It was really, really important. Got back there. Then got to my appointment. Came back, checked my car, wondering why my brakes was jacked up. My brake line was cut. I could have literally died because I was in Cairo, Illinois. And again, we're talking about Cairo, Illinois. If anybody knows that, and I'm not saying everybody there is like that, but all of a sudden is my brake line cut when I'm in an area that's known for racism.
No.
So again, I know people I know Black people. I know and getting pulled over by the police and standing out and you searching my car and then questioning, I'm driving even here in Texas. One of my best friends is white. and we driving in the truck, and they pulled me over. They made me get out of the car, questioned me about how I know him, and went over there and asked him on the inside of the car. He's sitting in the car comfortable. But you got me standing out here in the hot sun, and you asked me, well, you seem kind of nervous. I said, yeah, because you got me standing in this hot sun and you questioning me like I'm a criminal. So I've experienced it firsthand. So again, I haven't had a gun drawn. Well, no, I haven't had a gun drawn on me by the cops. I haven't experienced that to where some of my other people of color have. All I'm saying is that I think it's just blatant wrong. And it's not about politics. It's not about nothing. My point was that people will use this situation to try to exploit it for their gain. And I said that I hope that it's genuine. I hope that the people that are standing behind us, that's supporting us, that's waking up and trying to make changes, I hope it continues. That's my whole point behind it. I hope it continues so that we can continue to heal in this country, because it doesn't need to stop here. If we're all woke now and waking up and recognizing that this has been going on and on, then it needs to stop. So if you see something, say something. Don't sit idly by and just watch, or, oh, okay, it didn't bother me. Let me just keep moving. No, let this continue so that we can really uproot it from the roots of it. And that's just my point.
Jackie?
All good points. I mean, I really don't have anything else to say after that. I mean, it's all true. And so, like Ken said, I just want us to lead with love. Love conquers all, in my opinion. And so, again, I know that we have a long way to go. However, I do, like I said earlier in my statements, I do see change happening, and, you just have to, I hate that it's baby steps, but we'll get there eventually. We'll get there.
I do see change happening. I'm hope that I'm around long enough to actually see the healing actually happen, because this is not just one or two or three generational things, aspects of it that's been going on. It's been happening for generations. So I would love to see healing for my ancestors or on and beyond. I don't know if we'll be around for that. I hope that we are around for the small changes that would eventually lead to the bigger changes. But my thing is at the end of the day, I would admonish people, and I've said this several times to different circles and different pockets. If you really don't understand the history, take the time to do the research. I think we fact check and we do history research on everything else, but this is a good time for not just people outside of the people of color to do some research and some history, but our own people. You'd be surprised. I've had conversation with relatives and younger generation and, our kids and our nieces and nephews, and have shared with them some stories that they didn't even know existed. And that's because we haven't taken the time out to do in depth. I'm not just talking about civil rights, Rosa Parks, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King. I'm talking about go beyond that. Trace some things back and bring it back to now, to current, to realize and understand what's going on. So I admonish everyone to start doing your history. Don't just stay in the now, but go back to find out what's going on. Find out how we got to here, because there should never be a time. And I'm hoping that in the futures to come, that you allow people to remove your history, your history from you, teach you their history, teach you their language, their politics, their religion, and everything else like that. And then another generation now begins to operate like we have. Do your own research. The Bible says that the people perish for a lack of knowledge, not education, for lack of knowledge. And once you obtain and have access to that knowledge, no matter what they do to you, they can never take that away. But if you're not what's the word I'm looking for? If you don't have the tools and have built the knowledge base in yourself about who we are and our plight and what we need to do, then the narrative will continue to go around in a circle. And we'll be like the children of Israel who danced around and walked around in a circle for 40 years. A whole generation vanished. So I think that it's our responsibility, and I've been doing it even more over the last few years, is that when I come in contact with young people, Know what you're actually fighting for, not just for this one particular situation, but you're fighting for those that came before you. And you're also fighting for those that come after you. Know why you're fighting. Know why you're actually protesting, the reasons behind the protest. Do your history. Take on the opportunity to gain as much knowledge as you can. And the Bible says, in all thy getting, get understanding. And as soon as we start to get knowledge and understanding, we'll be a much better off people. And then we can navigate and continue this walk towards change and towards healing.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Well, let me just close out in this scripture. You know, John 13:34. A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another just as I have loved you. You also are to love one another. So as Jackie said, the only way we're going to heal is through love. And that's basically it. Good show, y'all.
Good show.
Great show.
All right, well, until next time, keep your head up.
Keep God first.
And keep it moving.